Hello Lifetime Health and Fitness class. We're going to go ahead and take a moment and go over how we can complete our Laboratory 6.1 and 6.2. This takes a little bit of math and a little bit of time, so I wanted to walk you through step by step. What you'll need for this is you're going to need obviously this electronic copy of your laboratory, and then you may also want a piece of scratch paper and something to write with so that you can write down these numbers as we compute and do our math, and so that you can save those numbers. So let's start at the beginning. In class, I went ahead and I helped you by doing your skin folds with you, and I gave you 3 numbers. So when I worked with the men, I did your abdominal, pec, and thigh, and then ladies, I worked with your suprailiac, tricep, and your thigh. And again, with those, I gave you 3 numbers. So if we go ahead and move over here to page 2, we'll note that you want to have a sum of all 3 of those skin folds. So let's pretend, and I'll use my calculator here so you can follow along, that my skin folds were 15 plus 28 plus 22. So what that would mean is my pec was 15, my abdomen was 28, and my thigh was 22. Giving me a grand total of 65. So that's the sum. This is not our body fat. We have to use our estimation chart here. So I'm going to go down towards the bottom. Ladies, if it's you, you have table 6.2 here, and you can start there. But gentlemen, we'll need to go ahead and scroll down one more page to 6.3. This is estimate for men. So I'm 37 years old. My sum was 65. So 37, match that up with 65, and the estimation is going to be 20.2. So I'll come back up here. 20.2% body fat. So those numbers are done. So now I need to classify and figure out what is that considered underweight, normal weight, or overweight. This is where you're going to need your textbook or access to a textbook. And if you have the 6th edition, what you'll want to do is you'll want to turn to page 46, and it's figure 6.2. And in that figure, it provides you with a table that will give you your status of overweight, underweight, average weight or normal weight, and obese. So go ahead and utilize that table. Again, it's categorized by age and body fat, and you can determine what your classification is. So if I'm looking at mine, I'm looking at my textbook here. I'm on page 146, again, figure 6.2. I know I'm a male. I'm between the ages of 20 and 39. My body fat was 20.2%. So I'm right on the edge of overweight. So for a male, ideally, if I was normal, I'd be 8 to 19%. If I'm slightly overweight, I'd be 20 to 24%, and I'm on the lower end of that scale. So I would actually be classified as overweight, but I'm pretty close to that normal range. So now that you've done that, you notice that we have waist to hip. I did these for you in class as well. I gave you 2 numbers. We're going to put in our waist measurement. All right. So for my waist, I was 31. My hips were 35. This is waist to hip ratio, so I can just divide that. So if I take 31, or whatever your top number was, I gave you those 2 readings, and I divide that by 35. Okay, I end up with 88.5. or if I round it my 7 here, I round that up, I'd be 88.6. Okay, so it went ahead and rounded it for me. So now again, I need to find my classification or my risk category, and I'm going to need only look one page ahead here. It's provided in the laboratory for men and women. Again, if I'm 37 years old and I was at an 89.89, right here I'm at moderate risk. Ladies, if for you, you just look further down the table. So, moderate risk. Okay, calculating BMI, we'll go ahead and do here on our second part. So we're just going to pause for just 1 second. Make sure that you have a piece of paper, a pencil, or a pen, something to write with, and you'll need a calculator or your cell phone to calculate these numbers. So we'll pause for just a moment. Okay, let's go ahead and start on the second part here of 6.1, or actually it's the third part, in calculating our BMI. Again, let's take our piece of scratch paper, calculator, and something to write with. So let me go ahead and clear this here. So I'm going to start off with determining my weight in kilograms. So if I'm 170 pounds, I want to go ahead and divide that by 2.2. And what that means is for every 1 kilogram, that's equal or representative to 2.2 pounds. So if I know my weight in pounds, which is 170, I'm going to divide that by 2.2. And again, you notice I end up with 77.27 or 77.3. Go ahead and put that number in. Then I need to calculate my height in meters. The way I'll do this is I have to get my height into inches. So for example, I know that I am 5'8". So I have to get this all into inches. So I can take my 5 feet, and I know there's 12 inches for every foot, so I'll take that times 12, and I end up with 60. But I'm 5'8", so I need to add that extra 8 inches back in. I'm going to add my 8 inches in. So there's my 5'8" is representative by 68 inches. But again, see, I need to get this into meters squared. So if I take 68, I'm going to divide this by 39.25. And you may ask, why that number? Well, I need to get into meters, and what I do know is that for every 1 meter, that's equal to 39.25 inches. So I'm taking my 68 inches and dividing it by 39.25 to find my height in meters. Okay. So I end up with 1.73. So write that number, not my number down, but your number. When you took your height in inches and you divided it by 39.25, what number did you end up with? So I can go ahead and I'll take now. Now if we look here again, notice it's meters squared. So I need to take that 1.73 that I had, or whatever your number is, and I need to take that times itself. Thus, it's being squared. Or for some of you, if you have it on your calculator, you can just square it on your calculator. So I end up with 2.99. I'm going to go ahead and round this up. My height, my personal height in meters squared is 3. Okay, so BMI is representative of your weight in kilograms divided by your height in meters squared. So I can pull this up here. Clear that off. I'm going to add, again, my weight in kilograms, 77.3, and I will divide that by my height in meters squared. For me, that is 3. And I end up with 25.8. And you can see that here, 25.8. I'm going to go back to my table on page 146 of my textbook. Using that table, figure 6.2, again, find my age. I'm between the ages of 20 and 39. I'm a male. And my BMI is 25.8, and that falls again in the range of slightly overweight. Okay. So go ahead and fill out your questions. Answer the questions again. Are your classifications for each assessment similar? If so, why so? If not, why not? And then, which assessment do you feel was most accurate for you and why? Please explain. Take some time to explain your answers. So that will complete Lab 6.1. Let's go ahead and take a moment to pause. Okay, we'll go ahead and get started on the very first part of Lab 6.2. Again, you'll want a piece of scratch paper and something to write with. So if you recall, my current weight, again, I'm going to reflect this in pounds, was 170 pounds. My current percent body fat, it was 20.2, but I'm going to keep it simple here and round it at 20%. My current BMI, this is all from Lab 6.1, you can get that information there, was 25.8. Now, I need to select a goal percentage of fat. So what is appropriate? I'm currently at 20. We know that that was classified as slightly overweight. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to turn back to my book and I'm going to look on page 145. Again, this is the 6th edition of our text. And in looking on page 145, just below figure 6.1, in the paragraph, specifically the last paragraph, and moving into in the first column and moving into the first paragraph of the second column, you notice that there is a general recommendation for men and women. So for men it was 18 to 19. For men it was 21 to 32. There was the recommendation that's done by public health experts, men at 12 to 15%, women at 21 to 25. And then lastly there's an athletic percentage, and that's over again in that first, or in the second column on page 145 in that first paragraph. For men 5 to 13%, and for women 12 to 22. The reason those bottom out at 5% and 12% respectively for men and women is because that's what we have to consider for essential body fat. We don't want to drop below those numbers for men and women. So I went ahead and I picked an arbitrary number, and I'll tell you why I picked that number, or the rationale to picking that number. I was currently at 20, which was considered just barely overweight. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go with the public health recommendations. I'm no longer an athlete, so I probably don't want to get that low or need to get that low, but I just still want to stay within the general and the public health recommendations. So I'm going to pick a target of 15%. You pick the target that's appropriate for you. Okay. Again, goal, I want to set a goal BMI, and that is totally, again, up to you and where you want to be. I'm currently at 25.8, and I want to come just below it again. I want to get in the healthy range as I look over on page 146. I'm going to set that at 24. Now, part of the reason why I didn't lower it a whole lot, and this is my rationale, is because I would be classified as a mesomorph, where it means I have a little more muscle or lean mass to my body. So I want to keep that number a little higher because I don't want to be losing muscle mass. So that's going to kind of conclude kind of how I set my goals and my targets here. Make sure they're specific and appropriate for you. I'll go ahead and finish this video tutorial on 6.2 on the next video. Thank you, and we'll finish out here soon.